what's up guys? Nick the Informative Fisherman out here with one of my new buddies, Josh Parris. I've been running into Josh everywhere we go, fishing with Mike Coleman. Man, Josh Parris is a stud. Fishing with Matt Frazier. Josh Parris is a stud. I said, Josh, can you come show us how studly you are? And he's already been doing it freaking today. He brought us out to Melones, and I appreciate you coming out and showing us this,
I appreciate the invite, man. I mean, yeah, we've been having fun so far.
Yeah, kicking some bass, that's for sure. So the thing is, I'm always hearing about how Josh is a glide bait expert, and Josh was talking about a video he was gonna do breaking down some information about glide baits, and I said, I love glide baits. I fish them in shallow, dingy water, but he's like a mountain lake expert. He's a clear water glide bait expert on these lakes that are hundreds of feet deep, but we're catching fish shallow. And how he goes about doing it, his mindset's different than mine. His mindset's different than a lot of guys. So what we're gonna have Josh do today, I'm gonna ask him some questions. He's gonna break down things he's been thinking about, hopefully get you guys better educated and show you some cool fish catches along the way. Josh, absolutely appreciate you doing this, brother. If you do happen to recognize any spots we are fishing out here on New Melones and you see Josh fishing, do the common courtesy and do not come up on him. If you see him leave the spot, come up and say hi at that point. But do the courteous thing. If you recognize the spot and you're trying to watch this video strictly for spots, please don't fish it if you see anybody else up on there, or if it's a tournament angler, ask them if they're fishing a tournament. If they are, please do not fish in that area. So let's get started, brother.
All right, sounds good.
All right, so Josh, when a person's first coming out to a lake like this, it's big, it's intimidating, it's clear, there's freaking mountains all over the place, the water looks like a bathtub. Not in this particular spot, but the majority of the lake looks like a bathtub. What's something they need to have in mind?
You know, definitely fishing, you know, your main lake points, your structure. That's one thing, very oriented. You know, there's a few times you can do it. You can run down a bank and just chuck and wind, but a lot of times I'm targeting those, you know, stick ups, you know, any brush, big, you know, limber, you know, timber, rocks, main lake points, those sorts of things.
So big, obvious structures.
Big, obvious structure. And I know a lot of people do everybody hits that. Not everybody throws one of these, and even, I mean,
because it's intimidating, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and Josh and I were talking about this, and he said, you know, a lot of people will come out and he'll tell them like a good beginner glide bait to throw is a relatively inexpensive one. That's the River to Sea S-Waver.
Correct. Yeah, and that's, I mean, we've been throwing it a bunch today, and
it's been out forever. It's tried, true, and proven. We caught a bunch of fish on it today, and you guys are going to see that along this film the whole way. Inexpensive bait, perfect for you to get started with. Now, the mentality that Josh was saying is, they go out and they throw it for a few hours and they don't catch a fish, and they're quick to put it down because you want to pick up something like a drop shot to where you're getting bites. But you got to remember, these baits appeal to big fish, and you see us catching these big fish. If we were throwing a little tiny worm all day, chances are we probably wouldn't have nearly as many big fish because it just didn't appeal to those bigger fish. So the S-Waver's a good one.
Absolutely.
I know there's a bunch of choices out there. I threw the Savage Gear 3D Shine Glide.
Yep, that was a good one.
I think it's like 19 bucks. That bait works well.
Yep, exactly.
Bass Pro Shops has got glide baits.
Yep.
There's a bunch of them on the market now.
Tons. Depths has them. Ima just came out with a new one, the Glide Fluke. I mean, there's a ton of baits on the market, and I mean, really, for starting out, I would say, don't go crazy expensive. I mean, you got 20 bucks. You know, 20 bucks, I wouldn't, I mean, just...
Now, let me, so a lot of you guys are probably thinking right now, 20 bucks for a lure is expensive. Not for a swim bait. Don't be fooled. We've got swim baits tied on the deck here that are a few $100s.
Yeah.
And those are still relatively inexpensive versus a lot of the swim baits that are out there. And if you're asking yourself, why would anybody spend that much on a lure? If you go to a lake that 500 people fish a month, and they're bass fishing these generalized areas, you go and show them something different. This is new to these bass, and you're gonna catch fish that they had no chance at catching. So it does separate you by how much you spend on these things, and it's a whole nother level of performance. So right off the bat, don't get intimidated easily. Target the big obvious stuff, big boulders, big main lake points. We're gonna show you how to approach that, pick Josh's brain on how he approaches it, and then we'll go from there, so hang with us.
For the setup you wanna get started with, for any of your 6, you know, 6.5, 5.5 inch glide baits, you know, you're really looking at fluorocarbon. That is, you know, it's a must with these baits. Real, you know, stout line, as well as the visibility is, you know, much less with them. I tend to opt for, you know, 7 to 7.5 foot rod, medium heavy to even kind of leaning to a lighter heavy, and then Reel is going to be another one. A lot of times I throw it on a 7-to-1, but a 6-4 is a good reel to get started on, that mid-speed reel. Great way to get started. With your line, the fluorocarbon, you're going to run a 15 to probably 20 foot or 20 pound fluorocarbon. Gives you, your lighter line, but at the same time you still have the oomph to pull those fish out of stuff. And overall, I mean, you're fishing around cover a lot of times. Really helps.
Hang with us, guys. We'll be right back. You ever heard of Cal Coast Fishing's Rod Mule for super convenient rod transfer or storage? And how about the Bait Sack, a puncture-proof, clip-on bait protector that comes in an assortment of sizes? Or maybe you're looking for the best non-puncture culling system with Cal Coast Fishing Clip and Call. And it wouldn't be complete without a money beam. I trust it when money's on the line. And let's not forget the Cali Clip, a super convenient dual-purpose bait clip. Want to find out more? Visit calcoastfishing.com. Hey guys, did you know that Yours Truly is now hosting Lucky Tackle Box's monthly panfish instructionals? And aside from relentless fish catching, I'll be breaking down the rigging and the gear you need to get going along the way. And of course, a few extra tips to help you score more fish on the goodies included in your box. So remember, the tug is our drug. So go visit LuckyTackleBox.com and get signed up today. Attention Northern California anglers, have you been to Boat Country in Escalon with one of the largest selections of welded aluminum fishing boats from North River, Hughescraft, and now Crestliner? Chances are they have the right boat for you. And did I mention they have a full service center to take care of all your repair or boating maintenance needs? If you're a boat owner or just looking to become one, you owe it to yourself to check these guys out. Visit BoatCountryUSA.com or stop on by. We'll see you there. Bigger, better, badder. The evolution of the buzzbait is upon us. The Evolution Baits Grass Burner is a high-performance bass snatcher machine. High-end components, inline displacement, larger profile, balanced body for fast or slower retrieves, better deflection, and oversized treble hooks. You wouldn't bring a slingshot to a gunfight, would you? Find out more at evolutionbaits.com. Did you know that P-Line makes specialized lines for all your fishing needs? From the super strong abrasive resistant CXX or the low stretch super stealthy CX Premium, or maybe you're looking for invisibility or super bite detection with P-Line's 100% fluorocarbon. No matter what your needs, P-Line's got it covered. To find out more, visit P-Line.com.
P-Line, baby.
Being that we're here in Northern California, any of these glide baits, there are a few better months throughout the year to throw them, but I do throw them all year long. Your best months are going to be typically November to about June. That's going to be when most of the action, the trout are up, is just your best time to throw them. But again, I threw them all through the summer, June, July. There's a good bite in there that you can definitely find throughout the summer. A lot of times it's early morning into the evenings, and you can get on the afternoon bite. Throughout those summer months when you are fishing it, you're not going to get as many bites as you do when the trout are up, but the bites are big. You're gonna see some big fish throwing it through the summer. The typical mindset is big bait, big fish, which is absolutely true. Starting with the 6-inch class baits, you're definitely looking at quite a few more bites. And as you start to scale up your 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and even 13-inch baits, you're really going to cut your bites down, but you're looking at catching some of the biggest fish in the lake, your 10s, 12s, 14s. Those big fish will eat a smaller, bait, glide essentially, but I mean, when you scale up to those bigger baits, that's really what those fish are looking for. You also kind of weed out some of those smaller fish that'll come up and swing on the 6-inch versus the 12. They're a little less likely. Optimal conditions for throwing these baits, really for me, low light and wind. If you can mix those two, or one or the other, are going to be your best times. Midday as we are right now, we have some wind going. It's going to help out with that bite, kind of break it up. And same thing in the morning. Even if there is no wind or evening, you have the low light, and they're just a lot more likely to mess up. A lot of times these fish follow these baits. They actually get a pretty good look at them, and you really want something to give you the breakup of the water that's going to help you to get them to commit. And when I'm talking about breakup of the water, I'm really talking light penetration and how well they can see the bait. Water visibility is key in the glide bait fishing. A lot of times when you start getting into that dingy water, they start to lose some of their power. If you put it on a fish's nose, they'll still eat it. But having 3, 4, 5, out to 15, 20 foot of visibility is huge. You can draw fish from 25 foot away with these baits. I mean, literally miss a point by 25 feet. And if they can see it, a lot of times they will come up and follow it and might even commit to it. Positioning on the targets that I'm fishing, a lot of times I like to force these fish into choke points, whether it be on a slow tapering point, rock wall, over timber. You really want to get these fish to funnel in and get them to commit. Slow tapering points, a lot of times I sit up real shallow, throw out deep, and bring it up. As it brings up, it really cuts off escape points for, you know, a bait fish to get away, to where as it gets less and less points away that fish can get away, just more opportunity for them to come up and grab that bait. You know, straight walls, deep drop-offs, anything of that nature, concrete sort of straight up and downs. A lot of times I like to get right up against it and keep that bait right up against it, you know, fishing parallel to it. It's the same thing, as they can see that bait, they can pin that bait, and again, it's just something that those fish feel a lot more confident in, that they're going to get that bait when they expend the energy to go chase it down. Targets, when I'm fishing timber, rock piles, things like that that are isolated targets, a lot of times I just try to get my cast halfway, make sure that the target is halfway in between my cast. I get it out past them, I'm not landing on top of their head, and about halfway through get the bait to them, do some sort of action, and then I still have another 20 to 40 feet in between me and them of real estate to get them to commit.
Hey guys, Nick the Informative Fisherman here, and when it comes to my hooks, I demand superior craftsmanship, innovative design, and proven success. And that's why I've chose to partner with Mustad Fishing Hooks. With over 180 years in the business, you can't go wrong. So if you don't want to risk losing a big one, I suggest you do the right thing.
Wondering what I'm doing here? That's simple. I'm logging a fish catch into the Fat Sack Outdoors online tournament fishing app, where anyone can win an assortment of prizes from gift cards to hundreds of dollars worth of fishing lures. It doesn't matter if you're a boater or a bank banger, so hurry up and download the app to get started today. Ever tried pulling a planer board next to your boat when trolling or fishing from a swift current bank? If not, you're missing out on one of the most phenomenal fish catching machines on the market today. With Yellowbird planer boards pulling your lines perpendicular to your boat, you can't help but catch more fish. Find out more by visiting www.yellowbirdproducts.com. Most
of the areas I fish the bait, I actually do like to keep the glide baits near the surface. Again, it serves as another trap point. You know, they can go up, but it's only momentarily. You know, you see fish jump and it's a second and they're back in. Again, it serves for somewhere, you know, when you start getting them on a slow tapering point, they can't go left, they can't go down, they can't go up. So the only way they can go to right. So the fish will come around, start boxing it in, and that's, you know, strike zone. With retrieves, the standard that everybody says is just slow roll it in, which is great. I've caught giant fish doing it. It does work, it has a time and a place. But I would probably say close to 70% of the time I impart some sort of action to trigger those fish. Anybody who's thrown glide baits, or if you're getting into throwing glide baits, you're going to see a ton of followers. And even if you have the right angle, the right setup, you know, you're on a slow tapering point and you're bringing it up the right way and they're just tailing behind it, there's a lot of times where if they're just cruising along behind it, you have to do something to kind of break that hypnotic state that they're in and get them to react. It can be real glides with just doing one hand turn, another, getting that bait just to kind of glide out. You can do rod twitches, and even just a speed up. Just, you know, if you're cruising along, just a speed up, kill it for a second, and then go right back into slow roll. There's really no recipe for the right, you know, circumstances. You just have to go out there and start playing with them. One day it'll be a pop that gets them to go. The next day it'll be a speed up, and then kill it, and then they just come up and hammer it. So really experiment when you guys are out there. Color is something that is extremely overlooked. A lot of people get one color and chuck it and chuck it and chuck it, and I do highly suggest getting a couple colors that are far apart. Something today we even ran into was first thing this morning, I'm throwing a baby bass pattern, gold and black, and I mean just whacking them, you know, having a good day. Nick was actually throwing trout pattern, which he was still getting bites, putting fish in the boat, but there was definitely a sway. And you know, beginning, you know, we're kind of thinking, I'm in the front, you know, I'm getting them. Nick actually made the switch over to baby bass. Within 30 minutes, I lose mine. Snap it off on a cast, and I mean, immediately the fish catching swayed from, doesn't matter, I was throwing out of the front, I'm throwing a silver now, and he's whacking them. I'm pulling it right over fish. They're just not reacting to it, to where when they're really keying in on a certain bait, today it's bluegill, baby bass, and even watercolor can play into there. If they can just see it better, it can be a big factor. But definitely try to key in on whatever the forage is. Shad's another one, you know, we started some shad, and that's to where, you know, the silver was working a little bit. But definitely spread out your colors and make sure that you're throwing the right color for what those fish are targeting. So the next thing we're going to talk about is going to be rate of fall. It's something that is actually a little bit difficult to do. A lot of these baits, they come in one rate of fall. There's very few glide baits that have multiple rates of fall, so kind of leaves it to you. This is a bit more advanced for you to kind of play with. There's a few tips and tricks that I can give you guys to adjust the rate of fall. Today, it's a very surface oriented bite. I have had days to where they want it 5, 6, 7, even 10 foot down, where again, I am modifying the bait to fall to the depth I want. We're gonna just go with river to sea S-Waver. What I do on this bait is typically about an ROF 5. I switch out the split rings and the treble hooks to slightly smaller. The split rings I go down to about a number 4. Again, just anything smaller, you don't have to be exact, but look at what's there. Downsize, and it will actually cause the bait to sink slower, if not suspend. And you kind of got to play with it. Some baits, they'll actually begin to float. The other thing that I change out the hardware for is hookups. That's a really big one. There's days like this morning, we started out and these fish are just slapping at these baits, coming up swinging real fast, real hard, and the round bend is just the way to go. When those fish are coming up swinging, the round bend, you tend to get those glancing shots to actually hook up. You know, catch them just in the corner of the mouth. They're not completely committing to the bait. As the days progressed, we've actually started switching over to some EWGs. The difference is actually the curve of the hook is a little bit more in. It's for those fish that really eat that bait. When that EWG sticks in them, like I said, it's got that inward curve and it really holds on to those fish better. You tend to have less fish throw the bait. We had one big one on the round bend throw it. Since then I switched over to the EWG and I've been keeping most of them hooked up. So when choosing glide baits, a lot of these baits are slightly different in the way that they glide. Some have real wide glides, some have really short glides, as well as you'll start to see as you fish different baits, they do something different when you twitch them, when you speed them up. Some have a tendency to kind of roll over, some do it really well as some baits turn really erratically. A lot of times I tend to gear towards those baits that have real hard, real heavy action when you start working them, that start to do a lot more movement when the fish are real active, when they're feeding, when they're up doing their thing. I tend to go with the baits. This is the I'm a glide fluke, and this one has a real sharp, when you pop your rod, this thing turns, makes a full 180. And I mean, it's great for getting those fish that are really active going. Again, when things are a little bit slower, later mid-afternoon, even in the morning, sometimes it's just the attitude of the fish. When they're a little bit slower, less aggressive, I go with your more standard, little bit of a less glide. It's a little bit more tighter of a glide, doesn't have as much action, but it just glides really well, really monotonous. And a lot of times, you know, those fish that just kind of want to follow it for a little bit, that's, you know, a go-to. The Shine Glide's another good one. There's a handful of them on the market that have a slight variation in the glide and the action on them. So don't be afraid to get multiple baits. You know, get a Waver, a Glide Fluke, you know, a Shine Glide, you know, any different glide baits. And really, you know, if you can afford it, try them out. Get, you know, 2, 3, and they will all have a time and place for you. And definitely take nothing but those baits and throw them. You know, get out there, work those baits, and if you have nothing in your boat but those baits, you're going to learn the differences between those baits. You're going to figure out which one does what. Definitely get out there and work them. You finally done everything right and you get your bite, your fish is hooked up. Fighting that fish, getting it to the boat. It's something that actually takes quite a bit of practice. You're going to really need to keep your forward momentum. One thing that I do to, you know, keep that is my drag. I keep my drag tight enough to where when I swing on that fish, I'm going to bury those hooks, but I can just keep reeling, just reel. If my line needs to, it'll slip a little bit, give the fish what it needs, but you know, fighting them back to the boat is key. You don't want your drag too tight. If it's too tight, you're going to start pulling hooks. We're using treble hooks here, and again, a lot of times, I mean, very few fish that I catch have that bait in their mouth. Most of them, it's outside of their face. You know, brings me to the next point is if you can, keep them down. They get up and start shaking, which you guys will see in this video. They get up above the water and start shaking that thing, it's bad news. I mean, in this video, you guys will see the same thing, is I will bury my rod all the way down under the water to keep those fish down. The whole time, continuing my forward momentum. Have somebody ready with a net or be ready to flip them in the boat.
Josh, greatly appreciate you giving us that insight, brother. I had a hell of a blast out here today catching fish with you. Oh, one thing, if people are watching in Northern California, and if you're not, I'm sorry, a lot of this probably still applies to where you live, so
Absolutely.
Don't be afraid to get out there and try it. Can you suggest some lakes for us around here that this tends to work well?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, really, in my mind, if it has fish in it, bathtub.
I'm putting fish.
I'm telling you, man, it's amazing. Even some of these lakes, again, big bait sort of thing. McClure's one of those lakes not known for giant fish. Folsom, not known for giant fish. More clear water bodies, you will find the biggest fish in the lakes, And even if they're a 3-4 pounder, that's huge on McClure, Folsom, those are winning fish,
I know of Comanche's a great swim bait lake.
Comanche's a huge one. Pardee's a fun one.
Yeah.
That one's clear.
And the interesting part is, this works so well at Clear Lake, and Clear Lake is not clear.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's one of those exceptional lakes that you can go fish, that the water is pretty dingy, that this does work well. But like Josh said, if you see a target, you do need to get a little bit closer because it does lose its drawing power with that dirty water. Absolutely. Josh, greatly appreciated, brother. Thanks for sharing the insight.
Absolutely.
If you guys aren't following this man right here, check the description or check the comment section. I'll link to Josh's stuff. Josh is talking about possibly guiding maybe later this year or next year. So if that happens, I'm going to slip this man's guide information out there. This guy's is a hell of a dude, hell of a nice guy. If you get the opportunity to go fish with this guy, absolutely do so. InformativeFisherman.com. Make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and select that little bell notification to receive all the latest and greatest videos. Appreciate you guys watching. Go kick some bass.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's do that, brother.
Yeah. Let's go get them. Hold on, I lost my train of thought.
Yeah.
We were talking and then it was like, meh. All right. Say just step right on the seat.
Yeah,
just
I'm going to this
Don't
time.
get your glasses because your glasses are sitting on the seat.
God.
Ooh. Ooh. Oh. Okay, we're good.